All right, enough of that. Hey, greetings, everybody. I'm Mark Taylor, aka Lord Hammer from GuildUmbra.com, and you are looking at a impromptu chat session, aka a BS session. To catch the subliminal right there. And I'm here with Justin Lowe, aka Sato, aka at Zarok. What's going on, brother?
Not much, not much. Same old, same old.
So, I mean, tonight's just the two of us, and I kind of was just itching to get out and talk to somebody and speculate about what the heck's going on with Crowfall. So tonight, instead of normally hitting three, I guess, games and talking about those things, we're just going to talk about Crowfall right now because that's pretty much the thing I think that's kind of hot. And, of course, right as we do this, I noticed that on the stream it kind of slid us down. Let me fix this. So why don't you tell everybody about what happened this week with Crowfall while I go ahead and fix this?
Sure. So Crowfall announced its Kickstarter campaign. That was the big reveal for its massive countdown that we've been looking forward to for the last I don't know how many months. It's been quite some time since they had it up there, and really we didn't really know what it was going to be, but it basically just was unveiled as a Kickstarter campaign. It came along with a video and also a bunch of tiers for people to donate to and all that stuff. That's pretty much what it was kind of unveiled as. We can kind of get into the specifics about the pricing modules and tiers and all that stuff, but I know that when it comes to Kickstarter campaigns, we'd like to say, well, which one we may have picked up. So I don't know if you want to try and just maybe reveal what you put in, Hammer.
So you're trying to make me break NDA for beta or alpha by outing myself into which one, and so I got the Amber package because I saw that you could basically basically reserve your guild name. So I was going down. I was like, okay, is there one that I can reserve my name? Because I got the goofy name and I want to try to take it, and then I kept going down, and then I saw something for guilds, and I was like, oh, sold. And so I went and locked in Amber, and I noticed that all the guys from the Golden Glory podcast did that. Chiefs Harkin, Lethality, On Res, and then, of course, Aerolf. And then over the next day, that damn Aerowolf started, talking and casting, and so I did upgrade it to the Sapphire package. So that's where I'm at now.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't quite get up so high. I was much lower than that. But yeah, it does definitely seem that the Amber package, I think, is probably the most economical, meaning that the 6 years or 5 years worth of VIP time. I'm not quite sure about that right now, but I remember it was something outrageous in that amount. So for people that were looking to play for a long time, it seemed like that was the most economical package for it.
Yeah, they give you 5 with the package, but you get all the previous stuff, which is a year. So you do get a total of 6 years, which, depending on the way you want to look at it, that's basically like the monthly fee, as I understand it. If you want to, I guess, have the pay to play plan or whatever, because I think it's like kind of like Guild Wars 2. So you buy it once and then you can basically play it forever. But the thing is if you want access to the devs, you want cheaper prices for buying whatever in-game items there are, which I guess I don't really know them yet, and you want to be able to do other things, use the veteran or the VIP tickets. You could like hand them out to folks. So yeah, I thought it was like the best value, and so I had some birthday money too. So
well, right now they're like it's at $915,000 so far, and it seems like that the train is at least a little bit slowing down as of late. It seemed like initially that they were going to reach that 800,000 goal that first day, but that didn't seem to quite get there. And the first day, in fact, took like 3 days.
I mean, it did well though for what I thought it was going to go, because like it went to 400K, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then, like you said, it slowed down. So then I kind of started getting worried. but in 3 days, that's still pretty impressive.
Right, and they released the video specifically on about the game. It's kind of like detailing a little bit more than what we've kind of seen up until then. I think MMORPG had like this initial video that kind of glossed over a little bit of gameplay footage, like about 4 minutes worth of gameplay. And we saw a lot from that. But the Kickstarter one, at least, had a lot more in there for people that were interested in kind of getting like an initial take on how the mechanics would work, especially when it comes to PvP. So I was actually kind of excited about that one, just from the kind of like broad sense of how the game will actually play.
Yeah, I mean, so to your point, I kind of was a little not really disappointed in the footage, because the footage that they had was great. But the thing that I guess maybe I'm just a stickler was the fact that it had TGN, and it had MMORPG's logos on them, and I was like, well, I don't want to reuse their stuff, not because I wouldn't, and it's not because I dislike those companies. It was the fact that YouTube is crazy enough right now trying to mess with people for copyright violations. So right. I was actually more worried that if I try to use the video, that because it had their logos in it, that I'd get like something flagged by TGN or MMORPG. So I was like, can I just get like some virgin non-edited stuff? So that's what I was able to get. And so then, of course, what's the first thing I do is I'm going to go ahead and put our logos on there. So yeah. Now at the beginning of the video that's playing, that you see our little heads in front of, is actually, it's pretty much all of the videos that I could find that were out there that were on the Kickstarter site. But then I also added the 2+ minutes of pure gameplay, which was basically chopped up by MMORPG.com. So I basically did the exact same thing. So we can go to, I guess, a part of it, because you wanted to talk about other parts of the combat systems like that.
Well, before we on that, I know that we were talking about like stretch goals.
Okay.
How do you feel about the kind of monetization of an MMO this early on? I mean, especially because of the centaurs and this other stuff that they're already promising as far as like gameplay additions. How do you feel about the monetization of an MMO, especially one that is supposed to be all about skill? I just kind of, that was one of those things where I actually wrote an article about it on Game Skinny. I was a little bit not necessarily put off by it, but worried, at least initially, just by some of the kind of like chopping off of some of the content exclusive to Kickstarter, or giving like parts of the game out for free initially to get those Kickstarter funds in.
So, because of the way, okay, it's 2015, MMOs have been around for 20 plus years, and over the last 10 years, especially with WoW, let's take ourselves 5 years prior to WoW. So 15 years from now, or from back in the day, like right around 5 years before WoW came out, there were a lot of sandbox MMOs, and everybody was coming out with a new MMO like every 6 months. And they'd die, and way before there was a WoW, there was EverCrack, right? EverQuest dominated. It had all the numbers, and there was a bunch of decent ones before that. Yeah. But the thing is at the time, there was a lot of investors. There were a lot of investors, and so it didn't seem like it was a problem getting an MMO idea, concept off the ground, and within 2 years of development, they could have a game that could release. Also, prior to WoW, and even at WoW's launch, it was just commonplace for the launches to always be screwed up. The launches for MMO was always sucked. They always screwed up, and you were always there being a crack fiend, just waiting there, taking your beatings to go and get in line. So y'all had all these investors that were going to do it. After and during the WoW era, WoW took off, and then all the other MMOs kind of got marginalized. Some of them, hurt along and kind of eke along, but that's because they've found their niche. They've got their niche players that pay their money, and they make enough money to keep the doors open and maybe crap out a update like every year or two. WoW makes all the money, and then you had all of these AAA MMOs, and I know I'm being wordy, but I got to get it out in context. They had all these MMOs with great IPs that just kind of were lackluster. So I'm not even going to be harsh like I normally am and just say they just failed, but they just did not meet a lot of expectations. So where does that leave us? you've got all these players that have this expectation of AAA, but what do they mean by AAA? They mean on a rail in a theme park MMO. Well, nowadays, because of WoW and because of the maturity of the market, people want weeks and months worth of content, and they want it day one. They want all their raids that are perfect. They want PvP. They want crafting. They want all these systems day one because they have all these expectations of WoW that's been slowly adding that stuff in over a 10-year period of time. So now, good MMOs, if they don't have all of that content and that duration of content that's going to keep people busy for months and months and months, now they will call it a failure because it doesn't have that. So then people leave and they go back to WoW. So then you have the fact that people are trying to get back to the old systems pre-WoW. They're trying to get back to sandboxy kind of things. They're looking at procedural generation, which will allow things to be dynamically created. But then they add the other great thing of the games being reset, which is going to make a whole lot of people say, niche game. So you have these people who have all the experience. They know exactly how to get money, but they're trying to do it on the Kickstarter methodology so that they can release the game like Star Citizen in modules and chunks that are playable the first time, and they're not making any bones about it. They're going to add all of those other features over time. So I think that they need to try to get as many dollars as they can because of all of that other stuff that I just said, that if you're an experienced MMO player who's been doing this for years, you have the perspective to understand it. If all you've ever played was WoW, this and any other MMO is probably not for you, because they're going to be sandboxy. They're not going to have every single bell and whistle day one. They're going to try to bring them out over time, making sure that they work, but then they're going to take the risk of the integration, not being there. So it's a lot of different reasons why I think that it's okay for them to monetize the way they are. If they were a AAA backed, with a publisher MMO, I would think it would be kind of BS. Now, to take it to the extreme, I'm getting concerned that Star Citizen is still trying to sell me ships, and I don't have a playable game yet. So I don't want to be like hitting them below the belt, but that's an example of taking your question to the extreme. Every other month I see a new ship that they're trying to sell me. Now they're selling me mining ships for $325. I've been waiting for this game. I interviewed Chris Roberts in 2012. I interviewed that dude 3 years ago, and I still don't have a game, and so I'm getting kind of concerned on the opposite end of that spectrum. Like, you've gotten the money, you've blown out Kickstarter like all over the place. When can we have like a game? When can we get the first module to start playing with,
Well, I mean, they had that first dogfighting module, but I mean, that obviously isn't the one that we're kind of looking for with Star Citizen. But speaking on Curveball, just to kind of tangentially bring this around, I kind of wonder how much more they can give to the player for any Kickstarter or any future rewards. Obviously, you can do like cosmetic stuff or anything like that, but some of the stuff that they're already talking about giving away, like the like manners and stuff like that, like the bigger keeps for personal persistence. A lot of that stuff was based on a lot of the rewards that you would build up over time from conquests and other things, building like basically getting through the campaigns was kind of like the reason why a lot of that stuff would be built up over time. So giving people, those placements initially right off the bat, I kind of start to wonder, though I kind of have to go back and look at what they've basically said about the risk thing and the fact they're basically having to, reset each board. And if they were to make those personal kingdoms that substantial, it would go against like pretty much everything that they've said thus far in those regards. So I hope it's not what I'm thinking it is, but like then you get into things like the tax-free land plots that I think are basically the ones that are going to be for the outposts and stuff that you build in the worlds. However, those will go away over time as well because of the fact that the world will reset. Every time that you're basically doing one of these campaigns, a lot of that stuff will go away, I assume, and pretty much balance out over time. but it doesn't seem to me, at least personally, that there's a lot left to go unless you're going like the full like cosmetic route about what you're going to be giving away to your customer base. So I honestly feel like they may have cut too deep with some of their content that they're already rolling out to maybe backers for the game. So that's one of my biggest concern right now, is
can
on
you,
that point.
so let me pull the thread on that. When you say cut too deep, can you elaborate on that specific statement a little bit?
I mean, in terms of what they're giving out, I mean,
You
if you're
think,
going to be giving out stuff, you really can't give out anymore unless you're going to go towards either a cosmetic route, or if you're going to actually go into the point where it's severely impacting the level of play on your player base. So there's really only two ways that they can go, and I don't know about you personally, but cosmetic stuff is going to get me to kind of buy stuff constantly. The reason why Star Citizen's Kickstarter is so successful is because of the fact that it's also impacting gameplay, which I also worry about. Star Citizen's kind of gone way past that
yeah,
already. So that's my worry, is that every MMO that starts out on Kickstarter starts with good intentions, but over time they start cutting basically their core fundamentals of what they wanted to start off with and go towards. So that's my worry. And again, it hasn't been proven to be true yet. But that's my initial kind of worrying with this, is that over time it may become a bigger deal.
yeah. I mean, luckily we're 2 years away, basically, for lack of a better word, for really truly seeing the full fruition of what they want. Theoretically, this summer we'll be playing, the folks who are going to get into Alpha One. So if you're
Sapphire, yeah.
yeah, we're gonna
You.
be in Alpha. Shh, shh, you know.
You're going to be the one in alpha, and I'm just going to be sitting there and I'm gonna be like, oh, man, I
I
wish.
I think a lot of people will be in in Alpha One, Alpha Two, the whole 9 yards. I think the usual suspects will be in the game, if not for the fact that they're in certain guilds, the fact that they're known quantities in the game media space, and I think that's a perfectly fine thing, especially if you're going to be in there and you're going to be trying to help them make the game that they want it to be. So that's just a reality. Most of the people who do fan sites, most people who are in big guilds, they get into the betas and alphas and the closed testing and all that stuff, and it almost is not even a secret anymore, right? Because it's all what you see, the usual suspects doing it and testing these things, and then they play coy when they do their podcast. But anywho, at the end of the day, I think that it's smart for them to try to monetize now, because I was looking at, or if we take seriously what we heard SWTOR had as their budget, and then we look at these guys are only asking for 800K, like,
Yeah, it seems way, way low budget.
like, I'm like, okay, I counted like what, 10, 15 dudes in the little picture where they're like, please, back us. And I'm like, if the average guy's making 80 grand, set 50 to 80 grand as a developer, and that's like really on the low end. And how long can that 800K last? I don't see that lasting them more than a year. So definitely they got to have funding sources from other places, which they said they got started with additional funding. So if this is kind of like Star Citizen, then they're going to utilize the Kickstarter to try to prove that they can get X amount of money from the fans. Hopefully the Kickstarter will keep having the gift that keeps on giving, but I think it'll be a litmus test to get the investors that they want to invest in their game, vice the people who just come to them to try to say, here, take my money so I can have this much control over the direction and have a spreadsheet and drive how you're going to make the game appeal to the largest, different groups of people so that we can make more money. I think that they probably, and I'm speculating, but I've heard, people who make widgets and people who invest kind of have these same kind of conversations. There are people that they know that they want to be investors because they know that they will allow them to have the creative control to bring them the money or whatever. And so that's what I kind of think it'll turn into, unless you can really get a AAA MMO done for 800K these days.
Well, the question also is like, how long have they been working on it? Previous to this, obviously what they're showing us in the pre-alpha stage seems already pretty polished to me. It has a lot, obviously, to go.
Yeah.
with animations, like the knockoff animations and stuff like that. Like there's a lot, obviously the VFX stuff that they've talked about that they need to actually work on. Part of the reason why they have those stretch goals actually thus far. So there's obviously a lot of like some of the like polish areas, but it does seem at least put together a lot more than I think I've seen in the past. You know, we have seen, for instance, SOTOR. I saw it like in a super early stage at the LucasArts campus, going back to like 2010 or 2009 actually. Sorry, this is in like what they considered like, like really early beta phase and or alpha stage, late alpha stage, and it didn't even seem like nearly as maybe as together in that phase as what Crowfall's showing out right now. That said, who knows how long they've been working on it. It's I guess it's up to what they're basically saying about it. But Gordon talks about them being stealthy on the project and having worked on it for multiple months, maybe years before actually showing this stuff off. But who really knows? It's all up to what we discover in the future.
So people who've seen me do different casts, and definitely people in my guild, are like giving me the FU, and I'm like, why? And they're like, well, you're always saying that you hate these cartoony MMOs, and in general, I hate cartoony MMOs. I just like the realistic, more realistic art styles, and that's one of the reasons why I just never could get into WoW. Even Draenor, I was just like, whatever.
But you've been played WildStar.
And then I played WildStar, and the reason why is because I never could get into WoW. So I was like, well, everyone's going with the stylized realism, and so I'll give it a try. And the reason is I wanted to try to get in on the bandwagon because I feel like I'm missing out for a while. I've paid, I've got 90s, I've rated, I've done all the different things, in WoW. It just can't hold my attention for more than like a month or so. So I tried WildStar because it had better, I thought, animations, even though the character models were still goofy.
Yeah, it looks phenomenal in that department. But
but this is cartoony as hell. However, I actually like these cartoons. So a person in my guild in forums was like, "Well, this is BS. How can you like this if you didn't like these other things?" And I basically, said, this is what I don't like, and I put up the Flintstones, and then I said, this is what I do like, and I just kind of put up like some comic book art. So just the art style, it is cartoonish, but I just find it to be appealing cartoons. And then on top of it, the big thing that really grabbed me was actually the animations. It didn't look like the problem with Elder Scrolls is it's beautiful, but it's got the most choppy ergonomic movement. And I just remember...
suffer from the Skyrim animations, basically.
Yeah, and I just remember talking to some of the devs, years ago, and I'm like, at a pizza joint, which will remain nameless, and I said, guys, I got one word for you. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, mocap. Use mocap and have good looking animations, and they just never did. Like if you look at the animations of the knight in the video, it looks awesome the way he's moving. It looks just like a comic. I mean, it doesn't look all goofy with the supersized big hands and the supersized big feet, and that's what WildStar did. And I threw up in my mouth a little bit every time I would log in and look at that crap. I loved the game, hated the end game, but loved the game. But like the cartoon stuff where you're trying to have these really crazy big hands and these really crazy big feet, that just doesn't appeal to me. Like, look right now what's on the screen, while we're talking. That stuff looks like a comic book. That looks like something like looking at the Avengers or Iron Man comic book. That looks cool. So that's the reason why I'm able to...
in the way that art looks, honestly, the way that Blizzard approaches it. That's actually how it looks to me. It looks on the scale of something much bigger than the project actually is.
Right.
So for me, on that same point, yeah, I totally felt that same way, especially once we got that first video with the Kickstarter. Yeah, it looks like something much more polished than maybe it should be, just based on like the amount of money that's supposedly needed for the Kickstarter.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm just kind of happy where it is now. One last thing though, go ahead.
Go ahead.
One last thing on the Kickstarter. I was just going to say, in terms of the
Yeah.
things that you got for the levels, I actually thought they were decent things to get relative to the money, even though they might have cut themselves
Yeah.
to the bone. I was impressed because normally you're like, you get a ring of +1 to 1 stat, and you're like, okay, great. This is going to be worthless by level 5. Whereas here it's like, hey, I don't have to wonder. Like usually these companies string you along and jerk you for like right until about 3 months before the game launches on, hey, can I reserve my name? Hey, can I get my guild name? Hey, can I name a something in the game? You know, I feel like what I'm getting for my money is like something not really tangible, although I will get a collector's edition physical, but I feel like it's something that's gonna really amount to something like you need to get like X amount of parcels that are tax free. I'm like, well, that I don't even know if that's pay to win, but that's definitely pay to make something easier.
Pay to advantage. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's close.
Yeah, it's a fine line, but I'm cool with it. You know.
Well, yeah, we'll say that, like Star Citizen, for example, is like putting so many ships out that it's almost become kind of worthless. Like when you hear a new ship coming out, because you don't even really know what it equates to in terms of time played that you're gaining an advantage on. They're doing that advantage system of like, money equals like a player advantage. But you don't even really know what that equates to. You don't even know what the implications will be on yourself for maintenance, from that end, because they've talked a lot about like maintenance on your ships and all that stuff. So you don't even know if you'll be able to actually use the ships or use the stuff that you're going to be able to. It seems like, at least with the Kickstarter stuff for Crowfall, it's a lot more tangible, and it's a lot easier to see what it will actually become or be useful as. So
one thing, I know we're talking about Crowfall, but just to hit on Star Citizen, because you got me thinking about it. The one thing that I think that they're creating is they're creating an EVE 6-year in scenario. And what I mean is this, like the way EVE is set up is if I start playing now, I will never under any circumstance ever with my tune be able to catch up to you who's been in the game 5 years ahead of me, assuming that you're still progressing and training, because you're just going to have that advantage. And that's fine because that's the system, so I accept that. Well, with Star Citizen, the thing that you're getting, because I asked some people in my guild who are really way more into it than I am, even though I did buy a Constellation ship, is I was like, so what is the advantage really of having all these ships compared to the person who just buys it day one? And essentially it's the fact that depending on the ship that you have, like a Constellation or a couple others, you'll have a jump drive. So unless there's some training requirement that I'm not sure of, it's going to be like the game launches and then it's going to be, like the Wild Wild West, go west, my friend. And so all the people that have those ships day one are going to be the ones going to be finding the gate, the wormholes and the new planets and discovering everything. And everyone who starts day one is going to be like, I don't know. Do they walk around? Do they have to? That's
exactly my problem with it. Yeah.
They're going to have to try to figure out how to get into a ship, how to get trained on a ship, and then they're not going to have any money, so they're not going to be able to jump systems. So I don't see how a person who just buys it day one or years after and buys into the game, how they're going to ever be able to find anything. I mean, unless, behind the scenes, they're just using procedural generation to consistently build new galaxies. But even then...
But who knows if the people who buy those ships, will even be able to fly them for very long before being bankrupt by the cost of maintaining them. So that's kind of my point on that. And who really knows, especially when it comes to Star Citizen. It seems like the more that we talk about it, the further it gets out from actual like a release that we want to see. So I don't know.
Oh, well.
That said, you brought up a cartoony MMO called Wildstar, and I actually kind of brought up a point specifically that I wanted to touch on when it comes to telegraphs. We've seen it with Wildstar and how crazy it got, especially when it comes to PvP. I know that you're kind of more closely acquainted, kind of like impacted with that stuff when it comes to the PvP than I was. But I did play it long enough to realize like how much of a spam fest it would be with the way that the telegraph system would work. So I wonder what your thoughts were on that. If you think it's like something that you're not looking forward to, or if you're looking forward to it and I'm just crazy.
I could care less, to be honest. I don't need them. But here, I'm gonna switch it over to a scene where it's basically the video that's been playing in the background, if I even have it, or I guess I don't have it.
Did you have my Telegraph little video?
Apparently not. Okay.
Apparently not.
So we'll just bring it back to us talking. But okay, if you look at the fight that's going on right now, you'll see the little telegraphs on the ground that the knight is actually, swinging a sword right here. Boom. So, product placement. So it looks like his telegraph's blue, and then their telegraph is red.
Right.
I don't know. Telegraphs are not really new. Telegraphs have been around for a while, and a lot of MMOs they never really came out to the point where they were saying this is a telegraph. Just kind of like people say in game, and in the game industry, I guess, got to GDC and got all snooty on us and said it's elder game. All right, guy, whatever. So I just really could care less. The thing I do want is them to not be a billion of them, because that was one of the problems with WildStar. There was too many different telegraphs, and then they had like so many different ones. So like when you're doing group fights, they'd be like, okay, it's a windmill, and it's a triangle, and now it's a cross, and I was just like, God bless America. To me, it just became a system that artificially made the game harder than it had to be. Because back in the day, you would just wait for some toon or other player to wind up their arm, and then you would just move your toon out of the way of where you would swing. But with this, relative to the time delay, the telegraph would go on the ground, and then you had like a split second or whatever to get out of the way relative to when the guy or the toon swung. And if you had any kind of lag at all, that whole entire mechanic kind of broke down. So, I was getting pwned a lot of times when I'm like, I know I was out of that, but because of what I saw relative to when when it went on the ground to when he hit, relative to the net coding, apparently, Hammer can't get out of the bad stuff, right?
Yeah, it puts a finality on what the game considers, or what you consider, you've gone out of or whatever. But I think my biggest problem with it is that it makes competitive play such that it basically just impacts competitive play at the kind of like elder game level, where you're basically fighting against people who know what they're doing. You should be able to understand what an animation is for another class. If you played it long enough, that should be a bonus to you,
right?
Or maybe because you played other classes, you become more familiar with other classes, so you know how to kind of beat them in your own right. So it makes it so that you have to actively think on the battlefield rather than look for the telegraph. I really hate the idea of playing DDR while I'm trying to play like an MMO.
Dance Revolution.
Yeah, I really just don't like it. For me, I don't necessarily mind them for like lower level players, like as a crutch, but for it to be something that's always on, for the rest of the time. And there was the video that I pulled, the little piece that I pulled out of that video, kind of showed a specific moment in the actual video where it wasn't on. So there's at least some hope for me that it might not be in the game at launch. But yeah, that's it for me. It doesn't make play conducive to people who know what they're doing. Like that fun. I mean, it all comes down to like who can spam the AoE so that it hits them, so that they can't dodge, especially when it comes to like rolls, because you actually do have dodge rolls in Crowfall, similar to like WildStar and Guild Wars. So yeah, it's not the kind of play that I would ever want to play personally. That's just my own opinion.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing Elder Game or Dungeons in WildStar, that they made it a big deal. I thought it was going to be so cool at first, but to your point, I spent all my time kind of like looking at the ground for the whatever telegraph, so that I could figure out what to do, as opposed to playing the game and reacting to the boss or the mob or whatever. So yeah, I take it. I mean, like I said, as long as it's minimal, then I don't have a problem. But yeah, it can definitely get out of hand kind of quick. Did we talk about the finances and the stretch goals yet?
Not quite yet. So we might as well kind of go back over those real quick.
So okay, 800K. They did it in 3 days. Awesome. Now they're on to the stretch goals, and so the first one was to come up with girls for the male centaurs. So I sent out a cool tweet saying that I guess there'll be a bunch of happy centaurs and another 800K.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of an odd stretch goal in the sense that you're going to make a class, and I don't even know if they're race bound because the centaur is the the legionnaire. So I'm like, can you be a human and a legionnaire, or do you have to be a centaur to be a legionnaire? But I digress. But they basically locked out like the fact that it could be a female. That was kind of interesting.
yeah. They had said in the early days that one of the reasons why there wasn't like a female centaur or like other specific genders for certain classes was because they wanted it to feel like their race like meant something, like it was specifically about the kind of like style that they were going for, so that they wouldn't have like certain genders for certain roles. So it's weird for them to kind of go back on this and go and do like a female centaur, but I don't necessarily have a problem with it. The weird thing is attaching like Kickstarter goals to race gender options, but that it's all that's kind of like par for the course when it comes to Kickstarters, and I don't necessarily have an issue with it. It's just the way that they had posed it initially, I think, kind of made people basically a little bit put off by the idea that now it's just attached to Kickstarter goals.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't. It doesn't negatively impact me, but I just thought that one was weird. I don't have any issue with it. I just, like I said, I guess it was kind of the only thing I could think of is, remember in Wildstar they had the Chua, which were, I guess, asexual or whatever. So they could. There was only
cool race, yeah.
There was only one. So we'll see if the Ganetian duelist.
And it's funny, I believe it was like Tully or somebody, can't remember which developer was in a thread that I was like pretty active in early on when the Kickstarter video came out.
Yep.
They spoke specifically about like centaurs and like how they basically will run faster than any other race, kind of going back to like Shadowbane and the way that was. Apparently they had kind of like discounted that specific issue in Shadowbane and kind of said that was one of the things that they didn't want to do again, but apparently did it anyways. Apparently, according to forums and people on there. But yeah, I found that interesting on that end. There was like an implication also from one of the developers that they might not have pants. Also, maybe two pairs of shoes instead, which seems kind of neat. But that's still like early days. They weren't really talking about like finalities and that. But yeah, I thought the idea of them like specifically running faster was a really, really neat way of maybe making the species and races are a little bit more like unique to their play style. So,
well, I think the other thing that's gonna make it interesting, which is I guess the stretch goal beyond that, and we'll talk about the particle effects in a second, is if they make like 1.3 million, they're going to allow you to have horses, which that does seem kind of standard for a Kickstarter. And more importantly, I guess the little carts or whatever that can you can haul out more resources. Yeah. But I was thinking about that in relationship to the Centaur. So I'm assuming that they can run at like 1 speed normally, but if they check the block for having a mount, now they can just run faster, I guess.
I would have to like look back also at some of the art. I believe like the Centaur is actually carrying the caravan, if I remember correctly, in one of the concept art images. I can't remember. Again, my computer's behind me. I can look it up.
No, he's in front of the car.
He's in front. Okay. But yeah, no, it'd be interesting because we talked about also the kind of like hunger levels as well, about like centaurs being harder to kind of keep and maintain on the battlefield, longer as hunger starts going out because they eat so much food and stuff. Anyways, that was a sidebar.
I'm as hungry as a horse. All right, so I think a great, probably the best stretch goal I've ever seen was the fact that they were just straight up honest and said, we want to hire another FX dude. Um,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I think that's something to totally get behind. Like, okay, right there, right behind us was the team. Um, I think that's the best stretch goal you could get is to just be completely honest. Hey, we got a guy who's busting his ass, doing a great job, but we need two of them so that we can focus him as opposed to like repurposing him with other tasks along the way. Um, and then I didn't think the effects were that bad, especially considering where they're at in development. But the fact that they know they want to bring in specific particle effects for X, Y, and Z, cool. I'm all about that.
Yeah, and the popcorn effects stuff that they were kind of talking as one of the things that they would want to go with seems like totally hand in hand with like the gods is aesthetic, like kind of like elemental kind of looking stuff. So I was all about that. Once they showed the popcorn FX stuff that they want to actually incorporate in the game, yeah, yeah, totally
Well,
awesome.
it was not the Templar, like on fire or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right, what is the next thing? Okay,
So.
yep.
Hmm?
Go ahead.
So just kind of like also talk a little bit about this. They talked a lot about like impact and collisions and the fact that everybody's gonna have to have a weight in the world so that you can't just like run through people.
Right.
That at least when it comes to lag seems a little bit weird to me. However, it does bring up some really interesting implications when it comes to tanking and DPSing. Especially making the tanks a little bit more important on the battlefield with different formations. I think maybe employ to
Right.
kind of keep people away. There was that specific bridge segment towards the end of the Kickstarter video where he was knocking off like a specific dwarf off of the side of the bridge,
Right.
which seemed really funny if let's say like they had like 4 or 5 people being knocked off. But really, you get down to like the formation element and kind of like the fact that it may be a little bit easier on that end to maybe employ some tactics that we haven't seen in other MMOs.
Yeah, it was kind of funny though, if because it definitely made you think, wow, this is definitely pre-alpha. Because he knocked the guy off and he was just like all calm as he was
Yeah,
falling.
it's just looking at him.
Yep. But to your point, formations is definitely something I think is really important, especially in a PvP focused game. The problem is getting people to actually pay attention. So you need like a very disciplined crew to do this kind of PvP because it's almost like RVR for lack of a better word, because you're going to have the different factions all vying for control of the same land over time, right? Which is more of a RVR, realm versus realm kind of PvP, as opposed to match or instanced PvP, like a PvP match
They
traditionally.
also haven't like said if the like factions like maybe make them look different because we're all kind of used to like Horde and Alliance and all that kind of thing where like there's specifically different types of look to factions. They had like Order, Chaos, and I believe Balance were the 3 factions so far. So
Well, that was only for one campaign. There's one campaign where
yeah,
there's 12 factions. It all depends on the guide you choose, right?
I
So
guess.
so for that, to your point, I'm assuming that everyone would just have a red name tag over their head. But however they end up doing, it definitely needs to be kind of like you're saying, where it's definitely a very well run friend or foe kind of system, because I would say at least a third of the times that I get killed in PvP, it's because I couldn't see that the guy's tag was red, which I know that sounds like a really dumb cop out, but depending on like where they're moving, and if someone's standing in front of them, I'll look at somebody and I'll just see the blue, and then he'll move like 1 inch to the left, and then I'll see the red guy, and like by the time I'm sitting there getting target acquisition, I'm dead. So
Yeah. Yeah, UI is one of those things that like really just needs kind of refresher, especially in MMOs. Kind of like UI elements of names, all over the screen where you basically can't see people ahead of you is one of those things that just annoys the crap out of me. So I hope they work around that stuff or figure out a way around it, like you said, somewhere on that point.
Very much so. All right. So, what Alpha One? Let's see. I think we talked about the Caravan. Let's talk about or move it on to Alpha One this summer. Do you still see that as, or do you see that as a realistic goal to actually start alpha play as opposed to what traditionally is called pre-alpha play, which is more testing of the specific mechanics of the systems to see, hey, can you get a person from here to here? Can you fight, here, as opposed to just really just playing the game in the scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. Obviously, depending on how much work they've actually done behind the scenes. So, for me, I don't necessarily think it's a long shot, especially when they're showing pre-alpha footage in the state that it's in right now. We can probably expect the alpha sessions to maybe be focused on like combat or what have you, some specific gameplay elements, and we'll see what happens with that. But I was surprised at the idea that it'd be out, in summer 2015. That seemed really, really close. And Gordon did say specifically I believe in an interview or maybe somewhere near on the site that, we would be seeing it sooner than we might expect. So that's a great thing. And I'm excited to actually get in, obviously.
Definitely. So what about speculation in terms of release? I mean, I thought I had read somewhere that they had said, the winter of 2016. Does that jive with what you've seen in development before?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's kind of all dependent on how it actually goes and what, obviously Kickstarter funds it with. I think a lot of those initial projections, we've seen in the past, they never really come to fruition usually. But who knows? I'm willing to give them the shadow of the doubt and on that, and maybe say that they're going to hit that stuff. But I mean, for me, I just want a polished game. So if it means that we're going to see a longer track record until the release, that's fine. I don't mind it.
All right, so I guess at that point we'll take just a quick commercial for our sponsors because we got to pay the bills. And when I say quick, I mean quick. That was almost too quick. Yeah. I think we've really hit all the big things. Did you want to talk about South by Southwest stuff coming up?
So yeah, I mean, I've already registered to attend the Star Citizen event that they're having going at South by Southwest. I'll be in attendance there. So if you guys see me, feel free to say hi. I hope to see a lot of people who I already know in the community, but going to be going there obviously to see what they have to unveil. And then they have obviously PAX East coming up, I believe here starting this weekend or this week. I can't remember when it's actually starting, but it's only a couple days away, I think. In regards
no,
to that, so.
That's GDC. I think PAX is
GDC. Sorry, geez.
Yeah. That's...
So many events.
Yeah, I normally go, but this will be the first time I've gone in years because for the second year in a row, I got my press credentials turned down. So thanks, PAX. So I won't be going this year. When is South by Southwest though?
South by Southwest is just in like a couple of days. Actually, it's on the 13th or something like that.
Oh wow!
I'd have to look up again. I didn't put the date in the notes. That's one of those things I should have done, but yeah, it's coming up within a couple weeks ahead. So
about the only thing I'm headed to that I know of this year is Star Wars Celebration. So I'm taking my 6-year-old to that. So he doesn't know yet. So I'm gonna.
It's the best con I've ever been to.
I'm gonna act like I'm taking him to school, and we're just gonna keep on going to the airport, and I'm gonna blow his little mind.
Nice.
But yeah, so. Is there anything else you want to kind of chat about Crowfall so far? I mean, we said we were going to do Crowfall. We've been still talking about Star Citizen. It's kind of hard to not talk about the two, but
no, I think we pretty much nailed most of the stuff. Obviously, we'll have more to talk about in the weeks ahead. So
definitely. All right. Well, very cool. Thanks for hopping on short notice. And we thank all the folks that came out and hung out in in our live stream chat. So we'll try to be back on track with, I guess, our regular video cast or live stream, next Sunday?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, folks. Take care and have a good one.
Adios.